What's going on, everybody? This is JJ Talks. We're going to be looking at the tension between the United States and China. This is a introduction to some of the tension and what's behind it all, and a little bit of history that's going to go into all this. And we're going to talk about the military buildup in China and the U.S. trade war and kind of visit all these subjects. So, new channel, just started yesterday, JJ Talks, 47 subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribed. And let's keep this channel building. We're going to talk about stuff like this. You may know me from Island Hopper TV and Altcoin Buzz, where I still also post videos. But let's go ahead and dive in here and talk about this China-U.S. tension. So a lot of it has to do with Taiwan. Okay, so Taiwan's a big X factor to keep in mind here. But even beyond that, it goes a lot deeper than that, and it stems from historically colonialism, where let's just call them the bourgeoisie, tried to, settle. They settled in Shanghai, they settled in Hong Kong, Macau. These were Europeans who basically set up shop in China, and it upset China, and they never really got over that. They closed out their borders. Mao Zedong, he came into power and created the Communist Party, which was directly opposed to the bourgeoisie, the middle class. And, it's a deep-seated animosity that China really still holds against the Western world, and now the most powerful country in the Western world, the United States. But what's happening right now is China wants Taiwan to join the motherland and be one China policy, kind of, they want to all have Taiwan come back, right? Taiwan doesn't want to, but what's happening is this buildup in the South China Sea. You see these islands here? They're called the Parcel Islands. You also have the Spratly Islands, okay? If you zoom in here on Google Maps, you can see that there is a military buildup happening here. And thanks to Google Maps and the technology involved in Google Maps, you can go into these islands here and see just what's going on. You have to zoom in on a couple of them. I know that there is, let's see if I can find a couple while we're doing this real quick. What do we got here? Okay, so you can see here's like an airfield. That's nothing really going on there. But if you move around here, let's see if we can find one right here. Okay, here we go. So you can see, it's hard to find these. You really got to zoom in. But what's going on here? You got an airfield. You've got a shipping area. Is this militarized? Is this a military complex? And the debate is China building up a military complex in the South China Sea? And why would they be doing that? Well, you would say, well, this is kind of the South China Sea. It's Chinese territory. But it's also intruding upon the Philippines sovereignty, maybe even Vietnam. And this is causing a little bit of tension because they're kind of just taking it. They're like taking the Parcel Islands and the Spratly Islands. And this is interfering with international trading, international waters trading, and the navies are having to get involved. Now, you would say, well, what's going on? Why does the international community own these shipping lanes that are just off China, right? Well, it all comes down to the good old Petro Dollar. So the Petro Dollar and the system that created it. This is the U.S. dollars. If you're into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, this is basically the currency that you are thinking might collapse, and if it does, you would like to think the cryptocurrency would be the replacement for it all. But China's going to have a big say in it, and one thing we know about China, if you thought that the United States government was oppressive, go meet China. And I'm not just saying that as a matter of spite, it's true. China is so oppressive in the sense that they're controlling everything. There really isn't freedom. If there was true freedom in China, people would be able to get onto Facebook, onto Google, onto YouTube to watch these videos. But China does not want their people exposed to that kind of dialogue, because it might, create an uprising against them, kind of like what you saw in the Arab Spring in the Middle East, where Facebook was being used to rally protesters. And, it's to Chinese government's defense. They know that the CIA has been behind that. Look at the history behind Kermit Roosevelt. I can make a video on that, where the CIA staged coups in Iran to overthrow some of these regimes. It's kind of like it's subversion, basically, which is what the United States is claiming Russia did to the United States during the elections with the meddling. It's subversions, where you don't see them. They come in from underneath and they emerge. And that leads me to another point. Chinese submarines have been emerging around United States military vessels, aircraft carriers, undetected. So that's something to keep in mind. But back to the petrodollar. If you don't know about the petrodollar, we can also do a video on this. The petrodollar is any U.S. dollar paid to oil exporting countries in exchange for oil. So basically, here, I'll keep reading. Since the dollar is a global currency, all international transactions are priced in dollars. So anytime someone trades in oil, they are trading it in dollars. So they have to have dollars on reserve in order to acquire oil. And this is what led to some situations with Iran conflicts, where Iran doesn't want to trade in the dollar, neither does Russia, and now China doesn't either. But some more other famous people in the Middle East that were taken out, Saddam and Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein both were trying to trade oil in something other than the dollar, like gold. That's what Gaddafi wanted to do. And we can make videos about all that and talk more about that historical reference too. But here's some stuff to just keep in mind. As a result, most of America's trade partners also peg their currencies to the dollar. That way, if the dollar value falls, so does the price of all domestic goods and services. That helps these countries avoid wide swings in inflation or deflation. So now they're talking about the pending or the potential collapse of the petrodollar. The United States uses the power of the petrodollar to enforce its foreign policy. This is what you're seeing with the United States telling China what they can and cannot do in the South China Sea because it affects the shipping lanes, right? So, for example, the United States sanctioned Iran for refusing to halt its development of nuclear weapons. Similarly, it hit Russia with trade embargoes for invading Crimea and creating a crisis in Ukraine. So this whole petrodollar system is kind of at the center of it all. And here you have China. China influences the US dollar by pegging its currency to the yuan to it. So that's kind of like what you see with cryptocurrency and Tether, right? But China is known for currency devaluation, debasing their own currency, the renminbi or the yuan, depending on what you want to call it. The currency in China has been devalued, and this was a problem during the Obama era, and it's still a problem during Trump's era of trying to control the devaluation, which allows China to create and produce and manufacture goods at a cheap price. That's why they devalue it. It allows them to continue to manufacture at a cheap price many goods. Interesting, right? So they curb inflation that way. Now, if you want to dial it in and talk about some of this other stuff, how the U.S. and China navies are risking a clash in the South China Sea. This is why I keep painting that picture of the South China Sea. And this is hot off the press. This is, I think, posted today, right? So this is the Indian Express. From a distance, the Chinese warships warned the U.S. destroyer that it was on dangerous course in the South China Sea. Then it raced up alongside, getting perilously close. For a few tense minutes, a collision seemed imminent. You've seen how the United States war vessels have even collided with Japanese freighters or Japanese ships in international waters. And, obviously the captain's head had to roll for that one. But when U.S. warships collide with any ship, that's a problem. But you can see tensions are definitely rising. And a lot of it is stemming between this trade war. So U.S. trade war with China and why it's so high. So largest imports from China is to the United States. Total exports to China, 130 billion. You can see, so we consume 506 billion and China only reciprocates 130 billion. So there's a problem here, right? And that is what the US government and the Trump administration is basically saying is like, trade needs to be a fair trade. Fair trade is where we buy and sell kind of close to equal, okay? And this deficit is more than 2 to 3 times so it's like a 3 to 4 times higher deficit here, and this is what has to be tackled, because if this continues to prolong, essentially what China is doing is just taking our wealth. The United States, and this is where the issue essentially goes for me, is where I realized once I saw this, I was like, it's unsustainable. We need to tackle this. The problem is people in the United States don't fully understand what is going on, and that's why I'm making this video. Is to let you guys know, yes, China does have a vengeance against the United States. As an American, you should be concerned about that, or even as a Westerner, period, because it's not just about the United States, it's about the West and the colonialism that took place. Now, which is essentially opposed in governance, communism versus democracy, or capitalism, right? Socialism versus capitalism. Because as Mao Zedong wrote in his little red book, China is going to succeed as a communist nation. Now, if you think communism is a successful form of governance, the comment that's been made is, show me a successful communism where people, whether it be Cuba, Soviet Union, or even Mao Zedong's communist Red China, ever succeeded, right? So America, in all of its flaws, and nothing's perfect, right? Not even the United States, it still is the best form of government, even with all of its flaws or economies, is capitalism up until this moment. Could we evolve and get better? Maybe we have a hybrid between a little bit of socialism and a little bit of capitalism, which we kind of already have, but it's something to keep in mind. So you can see there's a $375 billion deficit here as of 2017. The largest exports that China buys off the United States, commercial aircraft, soybeans, and automobiles. Although most automobiles in China still are Nissan, Toyota, but we'll just, for fun's sake, we'll pretend like they do buy Ford, Chevrolet, Dodge. Now, who can blame China on that one, right? Like Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge compared to a Toyota or a Nissan, what was a better vehicle, right? Now, some of our imports that we import from them are computers, cell phones, apparel and footwear, among other things, that everything in Walmart, right? So this has to be addressed as an economic policy. The United States has to do something about it. They can't just continue to run along thinking everything is hunky-dory, because it's not. Even if you go on here to the United States Census Bureau, trade in goods, you have it more dialed in here as of January, or even as of 2018. We're tracking this deficit to see how it minimalizes. You can see in 2018, we definitely imported a lot less than we were in 2017. And if you wanted to compare Obama's era to Trump's era, you can see when Trump first came into office, there actually was an uptick in buying from China. Okay. And then the United States government basically said, nope, not happening. And you've watched that number kind of go down. Although it was at its weakest in April 2018, and it looks like it's picked back up to the levels that we saw here. In fact, September was one of the strongest months. Now, why is that? Why are we all of a sudden surging back up? But also keep in mind, the year is not done, so we'll probably be on pace to even match that. And that's a very important point to make, that I was speaking out of turn, actually, because the year is not done. So we might actually exceed that. So actually, since Trump's been in office, we've had more imports coming in. Now let's look at the exports. So there was more exports, but the deficit, if we were to calculate the ratio, that would be what we would need to understand, is the deficit. So actually, when it comes down to brass tacks, we're not really seeing a difference in this, other than the fact that there is a trade war happening and negotiations are happening and it's not going to change overnight, but we're basically saying, in order to address this, we need to bring jobs back to the United States. Manufacturing needs to pick up. China can't just have the monopoly on production, right? So, and if we wanted to go back in time to, like, say 1993, you can see the deficit was nowhere near what it is today, right? Yet these numbers were not comparable. There's no comparison. I mean, it's just crazy how much it's changed. But China's always had that advantage. Now, keep in mind, when the United States emerged as the world superpower after World War II, and they entered into the Cold War era with Soviet Union, the United States had so much power and money, it was actually kind of in the business of building up other economies and helping the world out by building them up again. And China was one of the reciprocating parties of that. And one of the reasons is because it was designed to stop the emergence of another rise of Japan. So one of the things that historically you've seen with World War I and World War II is where the United States or the winning countries basically de-arm the enemy or their last opponent. For example, when Germany lost, Germany was not allowed to build up its military again after World War I, although they actually ended up doing it after 20 years. Then again, they lost World War II. Then they came in and said, no, absolutely not. Germany will not build up its military again. They did the same thing with Japan. And that's why you see United States military warships and protecting Japan, right? So like if you go to Yokohama or you go to Yokosuka in Tokyo, even in Fukuoka in South Japan, you will see there's a U.S. military bases in Japan because we are protecting Japan. Because if we allow Japan's military to build up too strong again, they might yet again seek vengeance against us. So you can see how diplomatically it has to happen that way. And, you know, I'm not going to get too opinionated on that, but you can see why that would happen if you were a legislator or a government official, why you would say, well, these guys tried to fight us. They probably have some animosity against us. They fought us already. They'll try to rebuild back up. And historically, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? You saw how Germany did that. You saw, and it's all throughout history, is eventually they try to come back again for a second or third round, right? Anyways, guys, this is just a very brief overview. I hope to paint the picture here. But you can see that tariffs are the way that the Trump administration is also getting back at them. Through tariffs. Tariff is basically a tax. You can see right here, President Trump placed a 30% tax on foreign solar panels on July 23rd to be reduced to 15% after 4 years. China, the world leader in solar panel manufacture, decried the tariffs. I've been to China, and I can tell you right now, the Chinese government puts 45%, 50% tax, 40 to 50% tariffs on all imports from the West. So if let's just say a Chinese citizen wanted a Gucci purse, instead of it being $1,000, they would almost pay $1,500 to $1,600 because of a tariff. Okay, and so Xi Jinping, he's the president of, or the leader of China, and he's basically in there for life. You can see the hammer and sickle right here, which is the Communist Party. And we can even do a video exploring Xi Jinping a little bit more in depth and the history behind him and who he is, but he's the powerful leader of China. So if you guys enjoy videos like this, do subscribe to JJ Talks. We will be going into all sorts of different subjects. And also thank you to everyone who likes this video. It was a little bit long, but hopefully I painted at least an introductory picture. We can continue to follow up with this topic as time goes on.